Okay, so tell me more about 2027.
27, yeah, there's all this kerfuffle about 2027. So, first of all, I'd like to begin by putting this in a context it's pretty important. If you don't get the context, it allows the mind, which will make up all kinds of stories about stuff and make us all crazy. So let's look at the context. 2027, actually, I believe it's February 15th, roughly, of 2027. The first child would be born, according to this knowledge, without an emotional center with a motor. That's the first being that will be born without that. Okay, the people like me, even though I'm, 77, I'll probably see that date. As long as the people that were born in the cross of planning are alive, that thing, I mean, people look at 2027 like a line. The mind looks at it like everything over here is the cross of planning and everything over here is the sleeping phoenix. That's not how it works. That is a mental construct. It's not applicable. So, first of all, that is a very important date. But what the background is, there's an invisible conditioning field that we all accept without ever talking about it. So that's the first thing. Clocks and calendars have nothing to do whatsoever with anything. This is a made up construct of the mind. If you want to talk about the depth of Maya, look at a clock or a calendar. Okay, all of this knowledge is based on the movement of celestial bodies that has nothing to do with a clock or a calendar. Now, arguably, in putting the astrological, I mean the the astrological data together to make a chart has to do with a clock and a calendar, but that is just to mark where those bodies were in time space at the moment, so that we can recognize the being and its place in those celestial bodies. Okay, so before we go further, it's important to, are you following me?
I'm following you. I hope everybody else who watches this or
Okay,
gets
so
tunes in are following, but I get it.
okay, so our mind, the mind is made for some really specific things. It's made for collecting data, for sharing that data. It's an outer authority for other people. That's what it's made for. It collects data, it compares data, it categorizes data. Now, where it gets out of hand is it starts telling us stories about all that, and then we believe it, and then we make decisions on that.
Take it personally and make decisions.
Absolutely. And it has,
Has
it's
nothing
not
to do with us.
no. And really, the other part that I'd like to talk about at another point, which is even more important, a deeper layer to this is that an essential part of the mind is so that we can commune as outer authorities for each other. Now, this communion, which we shared for a moment last time we met, has not been brought forth. And part of my job as a fourth line being is to pick up where Ra left off, build on the knowledge, not reshape it like Gene Keys or reshape it like Karen Kirky Parker has done. It's not reshaping. It's taking the knowledge and applying it in a way that Ra couldn't do at the time of his teaching. His job was to bring us a foundational piece that made human design accessible and improvable through databases. And he was a very cautious man. And he was very, very, driven. For example, the transits were more about proving the system than following them. He would talk about, I really don't pay attention to that. I pay attention to the nodes mostly. But I did the other to actually validate the system. Mm. And because he did that, we can stand on a platform that's solid. Thank you, Ra Uruhu. It gives a chance for a guy like me who has the next level foundation, which is a fourth line process. Now we can talk about the application of these foundational pieces in a different way. And that's what I'm doing. So the back to the background. If you understand that there are people, everybody that was born during the cross of planning has to be dead before it's gone.
So basically, the last person born on February 14th, 2027 would have to be gone, out of, dead, passed on, whatever, or, theoretically, or all of the people, including that last person born on February 14th, 2027.
Exactly. Now think about that. They're born February 14th, 2027. Let's say they live a normal, what we call a normal human lifespan now, 80.
Yeah. And most likely 100,
All right, so let's stretch it. Let's say 100.
For math's sake.
Yeah. So now we're at 21, 27 before the thing's gone. And people are all muddled up in their squirrely. They're getting squirrely about 2027.
Well, it's kind of like what happened around 2012, or even if you go back to like the changeover of the century from 99 to 2000, like why, and all the Y2K scare, and then the computers were going to blow up, or I don't know what was going to happen. I think that boils down to understanding that the process of the human experience on planet Earth, it is a process. It's not events. It's it's not an event that one day we're all we all show up with 2 arms, 2 legs, and then the next day we don't. It's like
no, exactly. And so that is why it's so important to understand history and in the broader. That's why I'm starting here, is because to put 2027 in a context, it changes the conversation entirely. Okay. So, first of all, we've got until 21/27, February 14th, before the thing
Theoretically, yeah,
gone.
theoretically.
Now, no one can really say how how that's going to look. I mean, if we even went back to 2019, there's nobody on the planet that would even talk to you about what's going on now like it was reality. Things have changed so much. You know, in 5 years, it's
Hmm.
extraordinary.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a time on the planet that's beyond belief. I mean, we have ringside seats to the greatest passion play of all time, truly. Okay, so that's one thing. Now, the next thing is the rave. The first people born without an emotional solar plexus, February 15th, roughly 2027. Before they become adults, 20 years must pass, 2047. Now, let's say that they're precocious and they start popping out babies 15 years old. Okay. Then the next generation, let's stay with the 20 for me, it's easier to figure math wise. Let's say they make babies at 20 years old. That's 2047. It takes another 20 years for them to make babies. So now we're at 2067 before the raves begin to really be something that's a force or something that's really observable in mass.
Or yeah, recognizable. It's kind
And
of
I
like
would say, really, it's actually it's 100 years from when they start making babies before the rave will really be here. Now,
that.
this is a 12-centered being, and we are Homo sapiens intransitus, according to Ra. We're the transitory form between 7 and 12, or 9. And
Yeah.
it will still be our world until probably 21/27, roughly.
So what that makes me think of is when projectors first started being born in what, 1871, 72,
Uh,
70, yeah,
exactly.
that it took until 1987.
Now, so I'm glad you brought that up because that's the next layer. I can't remember which recording I'm listening to. I listen to Ra all the time, so it kind of blends together. I need to start making notes about where that came from and the date he said it. But he was talking about when I'm gone, the next people to pick up the mantle are fourth lines. And there's another part to this. So it's another broader perspective. So let me stay here for a moment. The first line is foundational. It gives us the foundation to walk on. It's not airy fairy. It's not spiritual. It's the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's the base. That's what Ra put in. It took him 25 years to do that. Then he hands the torch to the fourth line, and then they begin to build on that base another foundation. I'm a 4-6.
Where
At
did
77, I just came off the roof last year, the end of last year, believe it or not. And I taught at the High Desert Human Design Conference. And it was me entering, I slid off the roof, kicking and screaming and claw marks on the roof. Hell no, I'm not doing it. Into my cross, the cross of contagion.
Hmm.
And here I am being contagious. So there you go.
So where did the projectors come in?
Ah, nice. So a little cleanup on the fourth line. We're going to be able to go. What my sense is that we are in the breakdown of the cross of planning, and what's coming with the individual is using human design knowledge as a tool to navigate the time we're in with spiritual ideals and principles that emerge from the center of the individual being, the 2034. And this is the next foundation. We cannot survive as a species without a deep connection to what is within our essential nature. The forces that we are aligned against do not understand us because they are not made of that. They are not. And they do not recognize it. It is the place from which we must take our stand. Because truly, we are at a point where our survival as a species is on the line. And I make no apologies about that. It's not hyperbole. Hyperbole. It is a fact. This is a battle of good and evil. Human design can be an extraordinary tool in that battle, but we have to take it in some places it has not been taken before. Not in a way that would distort it, but in a way that we can stand on Ra's foundation and say thank you for holding us here while we take another step forward. Okay, so the projector ascendancy, Ra talked about quite a bit, and we are just now getting there. The way he put it was the cross of planning was all about support. It was built from a tribal structure. So it's, if you call 911, you would expect to get help. Well, that's not happening. It's very simple. Support is folding. The projector is all about the other. We are the interim support as the cross of planning folds, because we are here for the other. We are the only thing that will be here for the other. We are not a part of the cross of planning in that regard. We are a part of the bigger process of taking us forward. We are the guides of this time. We are the administrators. We are the way showers. We are the teachers. We are the people that are so messed up that we put the other before ourselves most of the time. We other like nobody. right? I mean, the projector is all about the other.
Yep.
And so we stand in that gap, and that's just now coming online, huge coming online within the last week, I'd say. And at the time of this discussion, we're at February 16th, I think, which is very fascinating in terms of what we've been talking about date wise.
Mm-hmm. It
Um,
is.
so the support of the projector and the understanding and the recognition of our place in the process is really very important. I believe that it's I would like to reach out to other projectors and just say we need to gather small groups, large groups. When I was at the Human Design High Desert Human Design Conference, we had a day of projector only, and it was mind boggling and life changing for me. I had never been in a place where there were no motors,
No sacral motors.
no sacral motors, which is worth clarifying very briefly. The sacral is on 24/7. It never stops. It's the creative life force. If you think about the universe, all its job is to keep creating and be new. And it does that continually, second by second. That's the sacral motor. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The ego, which is a motor, or the heart center, the heart works on stroke volume, where the greater your stroke volume, the more rest. That is a low heartbeat. That's a slow heartbeat. The more efficient your work is, the more you get to rest. It is an inconsistent motor. The emotional center is a motor in that it has a wave. It goes up and then it goes down. And then it'll get calm or relatively smaller wave at the time of decision. That's inconsistent. No truth in the now. The root is related, its biological correspondence is the adrenal system, and it can't be on all the time. We would die. It has to turn off and turn on. Parasympathetic, sympathetic, fight, freeze, fawn. Okay, that goes on in the root, inconsistent. So those motors, I think a better way to talk about it is inconsistent or non-sacral energy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, rather than energy types or motors, uh, you're correct. It's inconsistent. So being in an environment where there is no consistent motor was quite enlightening, quite freeing, actually, extraordinarily expansive, and allowed me to touch places in myself that I have not been able to do otherwise, only in staying by myself or being in nature. And I believe we need the mutual support and understanding that fellow projectors can bring. So I just tossed that out there for everybody to consider. Yeah.
Yeah, find your
Um,
projector groups.
yeah.
Gather.
Find your find your projector people on your fractal. Find
Yeah.
your fractal. See if you can, and if you're a fourth line, get a network. Like that, so forth. Do what's correct for your type. Um, so I'll stop for a second because I've been carrying on. How does that land with you? And what comes forth? What does that activate in you?
In
All
terms
out of
of,
mm,
well, I think it's extremely helpful to put the end of the cross of planning in 2027 into perspective,
mm,
into the perspective that, it's not this abrupt shift. Like,
yeah.
when we go to sleep on, on February 14th, 2027, and one way, and we wake up in a whole different world on February 15th. It just isn't like that. What it brings up for me is, like, it really brought up that parallel between the Raves and the Projectors, and
Mm,
how
mhm,
it took several generations of projectors being born on the planet, in order for, until projectors, what we bring, how we show up, the energy we carry, until that is starting to be recognized, and in a certain sense valued.
mhm. Yes.
Yeah, and it will take a while before we're able to recognize Raves, the the new the new incarnation, um and uh it'll, and maybe projectors are going to recognize first. I don't know. um and then, and it'll take even longer before they really start to come into their own, reach
Absolutely.
ascendancy, and that's when things make their, we'll see the fruit of the shift.
Yes. Yes. That's a good way to put it. Uh, Ra doesn't speak a lot about it, but to some extent, a brief summary is that the sacrifice to bring forth the rave will be something like we've never seen. The human sacrifice. You see, these are beings that we will not understand in any way. They are beings that do not function well by themselves. They're almost autistic in a sense, from what I can gather.
Hmm.
Now, keep in mind, I don't know nothing.
Yeah.
I'm bringing forth information from my own studies that say that these beings are so outside of our frame of reference that they will work in pentas and be powerful beyond anything we can understand in that penta
Yeah, within a group. Within a
within the
group.
group aura. And that's what they're made for. If you look at uh, the X-Men series, it's predictive in that society is afraid of these beings for their unusual powers, and they try and do them in
Mm.
because of it. They don't understand them. They don't know how to use them. You know, Will Smith did a thing where he was I can't remember the name of that movie, but he and Charlize Theron were in that movie, and uh, they were these extraordinary beings that looked over humanity, that looked, and they had to hide, right? This is where this is going, but this won't occur for a couple of 100 years. I mean, in our little minds, we leap all the way to there, not knowing, we don't know anything. We're completely ignorant about this. So before I stop my carrying on here, my rant is this. It really comes back to living your design. Really simply, I want to bring it back to that. This knowledge was given to Ra for us to navigate this time, one, and for the parents of the rave. In other words, I have some 20-year-olds. Oh, by the way, quite extraordinary. I am developing a RPG, a role-playing game, a Dungeon and Dragon game, where you play as your type.
Oh, wow. That sounds like fun.
And it's going to be so fun. Okay, I have a D&D master, a Dungeon and Dragon master who's working with me. He's 20 years old. He's a projector. Um, and it will be a way for people to play human design.
Mm,
The younger people, the 20-year-olds, will be the parents. They're the grandparents of the rave. Do you see? They're
yes.
they're the grandparents. If they are grandparents, they'll I'm sorry, I'm the great grandparent, the 20-year-old's the grandparent, then they will have children that will be the parent of the rave. And I might be off for a generation. It could slide
Well,
even
it's
further.
going to come in phases. Yeah.
It will. And so our job really is to hold steady in the design process and live it and hand it off to the younger folks that will take it and live it so that they can raise their children that way. That's what this is about,
Hmm.
right? For first, us to navigate it and survive it. And second, to raise parents of what's coming in a way that will allow them to flourish. We are touching the future with human design.
Yeah.
Lastly, I predict that if you're doing human design, you better watch your ass because the powers that be don't want people to be independent and have their own authority.
Well, can I clue you in on something?
Sure.
Coming from having interacted with a number of 20 somethings at the university level, I don't
Yes.
think they can stop it. It's in their design. It's
If you've been near any 2034s,
I've
you,
yes, I
yeah.
have.
Oh my God.
And they get it. They're live to a certain extent, they're living it and they know, they're aware
That's
of,
so beautiful to hear.
yeah.
It really is. I think the forces that are arrayed against us have no idea of, of, of what we are, truly. They don't know their enemy.
Mm.
We are beings of extraordinary quality and power and spirit.
And I feel that our job ushering in this new era as projectors, holding the grid, holding it steady, um, is to activate or help people activate their power by understanding who they really are.
Agree 100%.
And
Agree.
and the other thing I was thinking, that 3420 is such a, it's part of the sleeping phoenix, and when the background frequency shifts, I have this feeling that we're going to be so involved with ourselves. Like, who am I? How do I use my energy? What is my power about collectively? That's what's going to be affecting us. That it's going to be a long time before we ever really clue into the raves that are coming on the planet, because
Oh,
we
absolutely.
got we're going to be so consumed with trying to get ourselves straight as humans,
Yeah.
as who we are as human beings, that it's just it'll be all consuming. We've got a lot of work to do.
Well, and if we try and do it from the mind, it won't work.
No.
We had it. This is really a body-centered um, wisdom
Yeah.
that if we embody it, yeah, we're good. Truly, you're. I want to. We had a conversation just before this one about relationships, and I wanted to make a short comment. In my lifetime, I've observed we have X amount of time with anyone.
Hmm.
5 seconds, 5 minutes, 5 years, 50 years. We never know. We don't know. Our mind would like to think, but we don't know. And we take that X and we lump all kinds of judgment on it. In my case, I had a relationship that by relationship terms would have said, oh, that was a disaster. And yet, in my X with this person, my unknown quantity of time, I came out with incredible self knowledge, insights, awarenesses that I'm still unfolding
Hmm.
with great gratitude. So I think our judgmental mind can get in the way of life. And that's true with this 2027 kerfuffle. It's like
The 2027 kerfuffle. How do you spell kerfuffle?
Aurfl. Fuffle. Aurfuffle.
Kerfuffle. That's so funny. Well, this was a good one. This was a
Yeah,
really good
thank
one.
you,
Thank
Sandra
you.
Grace. Uh,
Thank
so
you,
fun.
Doc. Yeah.
You bet.
Mm.
Stop that. Here we go.